So what I wanted to look at is just a bit of a different look at what Chanukah really could be about. That to a certain degree, if we start looking at this thing called Chanukah, Rabbi Mordechai Willig, who is one of the Rosh Kollel of Yeshiva University, so in his letter on Chanukah to his community last year, he wrote this beautiful thing about Chanukah and how wonderful Chanukah is, and then he told a story. So he was in Yeshiva at Kirin B'Yavne in 1967, and he told the story of how they were all sitting there during the 6-day war, and one of the Talmidim there, who later became a general and a very important person in the army, asked everybody a question, and he said to them, I want you all to listen carefully to my question. So I'd like you all to listen carefully to my question. And the question that he posed, he says the following. He said, we all speak about the Yavanim and the Jews against the Greeks and the Hellenists and all these things. He said, but you need to ask yourself a question. If you were living 2,000 years ago, which side would you be on? And that's the question you have to ask. Would you be on the side of the Maccabim, on the side of Matityahu, or would you be on the side of the Yavanim or the Mityavnim, the Jews that took the Greek culture and made it their own? And it's a very big question. You say, well, obviously, that's not even a question. How can you even say that here I am, I'm trying to grow, I'm learning Torah, I'm doing all these things. How could you say that I could possibly think that I would be one of those Mityavnim? But Rav Willig said that it might not be so simple, because if we look into what it means, the concept of that thought of the Greeks, of those Syrian Greeks that came in and were trying to really change the face of what Am Yisrael were, maybe we need to revisit how we are approaching things. Because if you look at what they did, in the world today, in 2021, which is, as I said, 2,000 years later, we live in a world where a space of values, which we used to call the Judeo-Christian thought system, value system, that value system, which is really powered by years and years of a certain level of thought and of values and of discussion. A lot of that value system is being challenged enormously today in the world. By who? By intellectuals, by people who are clever, not by foolish people who just want anarchy, but by people who really are pushing that, and they've changed those value systems. And in doing that, they've created a certain level where, because somebody disagrees with me, we're supposed to be able to say that you disagree with me and let's agree to differ. You have your thought and I have mine. But we have a cancel culture. We have a deep left-wing culture, which is really so intolerant that it's not prepared to listen to anything else. And that comes against everything that is the value system of Am Yisrael. And we think that we're immune to it. But if we think carefully and we look carefully at how our thoughts are created, or how our thoughts are influenced, then we could possibly say that we too are influenced and are being influenced by that culture in many ways. What are the things that we talk about to our friends and our family? What are the philosophies that drive us in our everyday life? What are the philosophies that drive us in the decision making that we make? Are they driven by Torah, or are they driven by outside philosophies that may in some way dovetail with real Torah values, but often don't? And what is happening even in America today and all over, where even so-called modern Orthodox communities and institutions are deviating from the path of Torah. And so says Rabbi Willig, that we have to ask ourselves, this deviation, this innovation of different ways, is that a Torah approach or is it not a Torah approach? Because Chanukah gives us this incredible human being, Matityahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol. We said in the Alanissim, we speak about this man. He's an incredible man. We don't really know much about him. We know a lot about his children, Yehuda HaMaccabi, all of these people. But one thing Matityahu did is Matityahu said, in the face of this incredible amount of Hellenistic thought that surrounded the Jewish people, impacted on the Jewish people. We know, and we've spoken about this before, that there were Jews who so wanted to be part of that society that they were prepared to have operations to undo their bris. They were prepared to do things that were unthinkable before, because they wanted to be part of this perfect society where the body is perfect and the mind is perfect. And we understand that that's not the way life works. We understand that's not what Yiddishkeit says. We understand that the body is imperfect, and we understand that the mind is possibly perfect, and we have to strive to achieve a level of perfection through the learning of Torah. And so therefore, Matityahu's call of Mi La Hashem Elai, who is with me to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Who is going to be the person that is going to stand up to all and every type of challenge to the value systems of what Torah is? Who are those people? And those are the people, those are the small amount of people who joined with him. And that's why we say in Na'alanissim, that we say a few, many in the hands of the few. We speak about these great heroes, great strong army who were defeated by the Kohanim and defeated by those people that never really trained to be in an army. Why? Because they had one major driving force, and that was Mi La Hashem Elai, who's going to be with me in serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in serving Hashem in the right way. So that's the introduction to what we're going to speak about. But what we're going to speak about is that we know that there is an amazing thing if you're a laner on Chanukah. Mike, I'm not sure if you've ever done the laning, but it's great to be a laner on Chanukah. And the reason why it's great to be a laner is because every single day it's the same. What we learn is what we lane is the narrative from Parshat Naso, and the narrative tells over the Nisi'im, the different princes of all the different tribes who brought their special offerings for the Chanukah HaMishbeach, for the Chanukah HaMishkan, for the dedication of the Mishkan. And every single one of them is the same. The only thing that changes is the name of their tribe, the name of the Shevet, and the name of the person who's there. But then they're all the same. Everyone brings the same one. They say, Bayom Rishon, this one, Yom HaSheni, etc. And every day, it's basically the same. The words are basically the same. So if you're laning it, this is the one to lane. However, the Midrash doesn't touch it. The Midrash doesn't think about it, because it's just only discusses on a global level, but doesn't discuss each day. And on the first day, this one brings the tribe of Yehuda, and the second day, this one brings, etc. But then on the seventh day, the Torah tells us that the tribe of the tribe of Ephraim bring their korban, and on the eighth day, the tribe of Menashe bring their korban. So you've got the seventh day is Ephraim, and the eighth day is Menashe. And these are a directive from the Ribono Shel Olam, from Hashem himself. It's not Moshe that didn't make up the order. The order is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted him to bring. The Midrash Tanchuma, and it's not in the normal Buba edition, it's in another edition that Rabbi Willick quoted. The Midrash Tanchuma says that anybody who questions whether Chanukah, which is the ultimate in innovative festivals, whether Chanukah has a basis, and anyone who says, I will not keep Chanukah, this order of Ephraim first and then Menashe show them that they have to listen to the halachas of Chanukah. So where does the Midrash get that from? And that's something we have to try and understand. So let's understand how this whole thing plays itself out. Chanukah itself is an incredible chag, but it's an incredible chag because there are no Mishnayos on it. There's one hint to a Mishnah, but it doesn't tell you what Chanukah is. There's no Mishnayos on it. There's 8 pages of the Gemara which deals with it, but we're not really sure where they get it from, because it's pulled out from different precedents, different aspects of halacha. And Chazal made a whole big festival, an 8-day festival, which is the most popular Jewish festival, without a doubt. It's the most popular Jewish festival, but it has nothing. The only thing you have to do is you have to light candles. And if that's the case, so what's happened that Chanukah became this way? How did it become such a popular festival? Why is it such a popular festival? It's a very difficult thing to understand. But the one thing that we do understand about Chanukah is that it has zero real basis in Torah. And the only reason we have the Chag is because of the rededication of the Beit HaMikdash. But the whole thing is D'Rabbanan. The whole thing is rabbinic. And if the whole thing is rabbinic, then perhaps we will say, okay, It's not in Tanakh. It's not in anywhere. Why do I have to keep it? And the Midrash says, as I said, that anybody who says that, the reason why you have to keep it is because of the fact that Ephraim comes before Manasseh. So what is it talking about? So Rav Willig said something very important for us to understand. We understand, because we are taught the most beautiful moment, and it's actually in a couple of parashas time, where Yaakov is on his deathbed, and he calls Yosef, his son, his favorite son, the one that he hadn't seen for so long, and he calls him towards him, and he says, bring your children as well. And he brings his two boys, Ephraim and Manasseh, who's the oldest, and then Ephraim, who's the youngest. And he brings them towards Yaakov. And Yaakov is going to give them a bracha. Then this is going to be the bracha from their Zayda, from their grandfather. It's going to be an unbelievable bracha. And the Torah says, Sikel is Yadav, that he crossed over his hands. And in crossing over his hands, what Yaakov does is that Yaakov puts Ephraim before Manasseh, the younger before the older, the second born before the Bechor. And the Midrash says the fact that Yaakov did that, we might say it's incorrect to do, but Yaakov is the Gadol Hador. Yaakov is the great, great sage of the moment. And Yaakov does it, and Yaakov is given credence to it by the Torah itself, where the Torah, when it comes to the Nesiim, puts Ephraim before Manasseh. But if Yaakov puts Ephraim before Manasseh, we need to understand who are these Ephraim and Manasseh? What's this bracha all about anyway? So comes along the explanation as follows. And let's understand, we need to just go back a little bit. Ephraim and Manasseh are the two, or Manasseh and Ephraim are the two sons that are born to Yosef in Mitzrayim, to Yosef in Egypt. And it's quite difficult because he has these two sons and we're not sure where they fit. We're not sure how they happen, what happens to them, because we're not told what happens to them, except at the end they get born, and then they're never mentioned again until the end. But let's try and understand. Manasseh is called Manasseh because the way the Torah describes it, that Yosef said, Shani, because Hashem has assisted me to forget, to separate from, to dislocate from the travails of the past. And then when he has Ephraim, he says, because Hashem has given me, that made me fruitful. So we need to understand what this means. By the way, what's so amazing is that this week's parasha, which is going to speak about the fight between Yaakov and the angel, and ultimately it gives us the halacha of the Gid HaNasheh. The Gid HaNasheh and Min Nasheh are the same shorish, and that is to dislocate, to move, to separate from. So Manasseh forms this person who is separate from. He stands as the icon of separateness from the past, whereas Ephraim, the Da'at Zakeni Mibala Tosos, is unbelievable. This. Some of the Rashi says Ephraim comes from the word pri, which means to grow and to be fruitful. But the Da'at Zakeni Mibala Tosos, which are his grandchildren, say no. The word Ephraim is absolutely, anyone who's a bit of a Hebrew scholar will understand the word Ephraim is two afars, afarim, Ephraim, which means, what is two afars? Afar is the dust. And there are two people that are referred to with the bracha of the dust. And that is Abraham, that is Abraham and Yitzchak. Abraham and Yitzchak. And Abraham and Yitzchak, Abraham is said that he will become like the afar, he will become like the dust of the earth. And Yitzchak, it says that he is the dust of the Mizbeach. And so therefore, says the Da'at Zakeni Mibala Tosos, that Ephraim actually, unlike Manasseh, who's there to represent the undoing of the past, Ephraim actually serves as the icon of the past of Abraham and Yitzchak, and that's hinted into the verse that everybody knows, the verse that we all know, Amalach Hagoel Oti Mikora Yivarechet HaNairim V'Kareh Behem Shemi, the song that we sing just before we go to see, V'Shem Avotai Abraham v'Yitzchak v'Yidgu Larov. Yes, Yaakov is saying that, but we understand that Yaakov is saying that to these two boys, and he's saying to them that they need to understand that it deeply embedded within the name of Ephraim and within the value system that they have to hold is the Abraham and the Yitzchak. Now, having said that, let's go forward a few years. Where are Ephraim and Manasseh? Where do they disappear to? So we never hear them referenced, not overtly, but covertly the Midrash points them out. Covertly, the Midrash says the following, that when the sons of Yaakov, when Yosef's brothers come to speak to Yosef, they have what's called a melitz, like an interpreter between the brothers and Yosef. And who's the melitz? And Rashi quotes from the Midrash that their melitz is Menashe. Menashe spent, as the eldest child, he spent his days with Yosef in the political realm, in the courts of Yosef, in the courts of Paro, making sure to understand diplomacy and all the things that are this worldly. And where's Ephraim? So the Torah tells us in Parashat Vayechi that somebody told Yosef that his father was sick and dying. And Rashi tells us who was the person who told him that? That was Ephraim. Why was that Ephraim? Because Ephraim was there together with his father all the time in the Beit Midrash. He was sitting and learning. And so therefore, who was he going to learn with? He was going to learn with his father when he was in the Beit Midrash. But when Yaakov arrives to Mitzrayim, what's Yaakov going to do? Yaakov is going to sit and learn. What a gavaldic thing. He's got all his children around him. He's sitting and learning. He's teaching them. Everything's fantastic. So Yaakov is getting old. Ephraim sees that he's getting old. He's getting sick. He runs because he's the man in the Beit Midrash to his father in the court, and he tells him what's going on. And so now we get a picture of who Ephraim and Menashe are. Because Ephraim is the man who represents the Torah. He's the man who represents like full-time learning, we would say today. Whereas Menashe represents the man who's involved in the world, in the worldly pursuits. And out of that, we can begin to create certain icons. Let's understand what this means. We spoke about Parshat Naso. And in Parshat Naso, we have Ephraim comes before Menashe. But Menashe is the older. And we live in a world, and our hashkafic world is what we call ourselves modern, we call ourselves modern Orthodox, whatever the case is. We have to ask ourselves the question, says Rav Willi. Well, are we a Menashe or are we Ephraim? Where is the primacy of our hashkafic worldview? In other words, are we modern or are we Orthodox? And what that means is that if we can understand what Chanukh is about, then Chanukah begins to be the foundation of our approach to that in our lives. So let's try and understand. Because Chanukah, we said that the Midrash says that we can learn to appreciate the halachas of Chanukah, even though they come from a rabbinic source, which is innovative, enormously innovative. How do you just make a festival? You can't just make festivals. But Chazal were able to create this festival based on all different precedents from a whole lot of different places, because that was needed for right now, for this time right now. So they made that. They innovated that. But when the Midrash refers to Chanukah, when the Midrash teaches us about Chanukah, it doesn't bring Menashe before Ephraim. It doesn't bring the innovation of diplomacy before the foundations of Torah. It brings the foundations of Torah, which is Ephraim, and only then does it bring Menashe. And let's try and understand where these two people come in. Because Ephraim and Menashe, they're given the brocha. And part of the brocha that Ephraim and Menashe receive from Yaakov is that the elder will in some way be not subservient to, but he will serve in some way the younger. And at that point, Rashi presents who are the icons of Ephraim and who are the icons of Menashe. Because if we can understand those two, then we're able to really get things. We're able to possibly use those icons as examples of what we have to do. Now let's go back to 1967. I'm going to go there because I think that'll illustrate something for us. In 1967, there's the 6-Day War. We all know about the 6-Day War, an unbelievable event, miraculous in a way that cannot even be explained. It's just so mind-boggling. The Israeli Air Force destroy the Egyptian Air Force, and they have total supremacy in the sky, and they're able to win this war in a quick way. And Baruch Hashem, with very few unnecessary lives lost. Fast forward 5 years later. 5 years later, There are masses of Egyptian troops all over. It's clear that they are going to invade in 1973. So what Israel says, okay, you know what? Not a problem. We'll just do exactly what we did before. We've had incredible success in what we did before. We're going to just use that as our basis. And they go and they try again, but they didn't know that the Russians had armed the Egyptian forces with these brand new anti-aircraft missiles, which were heat-seeking missiles. Because they're heat-seeking missiles, they take out these planes. They didn't know about that, and so therefore it was a disaster, and thousands of lives were lost because of that. People died, people were maimed, people were hurt during that war because they didn't see that innovation. Okay, they sorted it out over a few days, but that concept of innovating in war, innovating in politics, innovating in the world in which we live, says Rashi, is Menashe. So who comes from Menashe? The Rashi tells us Gidon. Who was Gidon? Gidon was one of the shoftim, one of the judges. And what he did, he was going to war against the enemy, but he had a tiny army. And because he had a tiny army, he was very worried about what to do. He had handpicked them all, and they were ready to go, but they're going against thousands. So what they did is he created a whole new innovative approach to war, much like they did in 1967. So Gideon, what he does is he gets them to make a noise and to blow shofars and to bang and everything, and the enemy is terrified, so they run away. And that's fantastic. But that's it. You can never use that tactic again because it can't be used. And that's part of the innovation of the world in which we live in. You know, you have a computer that after 5 years is completely defunct. You can't use it. There's no point in it. Cell phones from 3G to 5G, it took a few years. Everything is just moving and moving and moving and moving. And yes, it's based on that which was before, but it takes it to a whole new different plane and has to be innovative. That is the innovation of Menashe. Who is the icon of Ephraim? The icon of Ephraim is Yehoshua ben Nun. Now, Yehoshua, we know, also fought wars. But his fighting of his wars was a completely different fight. Because we understand that Yehoshua didn't do anything innovative. He was unlike Gideon, who was an innovative person. Yehoshua was the person who preserved and maintained the value system of the Jewish people. Yehoshua is the man that the Torah says that he was lo yamush mi'ol Moshe. He never moved from Moshe's side. He learned everything from Moshe. And if you remember, Moshe learned directly from Hashem. There's no innovation. And it says, Moshe kibel Torah mitzinai, u'masara ala Yehoshua. He just passed it down to Yehoshua. There was no newness in Yehoshua, but there was the Ephraimness in Yehoshua, which is the solidity of the value system that it gets maintained. And so therefore comes along this chag, and it's a beautiful chag of Chanukah, which in itself is all novel, which in itself is all innovative, which in itself is stuff that you could not even have imagined. I mean, where do you get that? You've got a thing called a menorah, and then you take your own little Chanukah and you light it for 8 days because there were miracles, and you say Al Nisim, you do all of these things. Where does this come from? I was actually learning today in the Shulchan Aruch, and I was just thinking to myself, now, where did Chazal get all these terms from? Where did they get all the halachas? How do you know what you can use and what you can't use? But as you go through each one, you'll see that it has a basis in something else in halakha. Because what Chazal was showing to us about Chanukah is that when you stand up and you say, Mi la Hashem Elai, who is with me in the fight against that which is trying to destroy the fabric of Yiddishkeit, then yes, you have to do things new for the time to ensure that you are able to vanquish over the enemy. And whatever the enemy could be, it's a spiritual enemy, it's a physical enemy, it's an emotional enemy, whatever it is. Yes, you have to do something new. But every single thing that we do that is going to be new, novel, and innovative has to come through the Ephraim line. It has to come through the basis of Torah. And when it comes through the basis of Torah, then it has sustainability. And that's why the Rambam tells us that when it came to this incredible time of Chanukah, that the Rambam tells us how terrible they were to the Jewish people, the Yavanim and the Mityavnim. Those Jews, we have to remember, just as a point, there were Jews, hundreds, thousands of Jews who fought against the Hashmonaim. It wasn't the Jews against the Greeks. Now, so I said this a few times, in Cape Town, when we always had our Chanukh parties, we're always at the Hellenic Club, which is in Sea Point, beautiful place, a lovely venue to have. It's quite so ironic, right, that we're having our celebration in their club. But the point is that it wasn't just the Hellenics, it was the Hellenists. The Jews had become so engrossed in that lifestyle that they fought against. And us, as we come to take that fight, we have to ensure that we are the Yeshuas and that we're not the Gidons. Because the Yeshuas are the ones that have a sustainable future. The Rambam, as I was saying, tells about all the lachats, and the lachats, the pressure, the difficulties that they went through, until came Matityahu ben Yochanan, Kohen Gadol, and he stood up and he fought against them. And then they did something that was so unbelievable. They established a new line of kingship. The Hashmonaim, who were actually Kohanim, they're not allowed to establish their own line of kingship. You've got to be a king. The king comes from the line of Yehoshua. Of Yehuda. And if that's the case, how could they do what they do? So the Rambam says, this is where you can see that the innovation of the Chag is one thing, but the innovation of the leadership is another. Because the Chag is based on all the different dinim. And that's why the Gemara says, L'shana acheret, at some future time, they established the Chag. They didn't do it immediately, because it needed to be percolating through so that we could see what we do and what we don't do. But the Hashmonaim took it upon themselves to become the kings. And says the Rambam, that rulership of the Hashmonaim lasted for 210 years. That is finite. When you create innovation that is against the very fabric of Torah, so that's finite. You must know that it's not going to last. But when you create innovation that is based on the very essence of the values of Torah, that will last forever, has sustainability. And so 210 years, the Hashmonaim lasted. But 2,000 years later, here we are sitting and learning about a Chag, that in a week, please God, we'll be lighting our first candle. Why is that? Because it's a Chag based on Torah. And the lesson that we have learned for ourselves is that, yes, of course, it's demanded that we are able to be innovative. It's demanded that we are able to approach the world and be able to engage with everything that is in this beautiful world that we live, the modern world, the world of academia, the world of history, the world of literature, the world of geography, biology, you name it. We've got to be able to engage with that. The question is, how do we do that? Do we do that as a Menashe with complete innovation, or we do that as a Yehoshua, finding the spaces to innovate when we need to for the time, but always ensuring that that innovation stays within the realm of Torah with those foundations. With that, I'd like to just say thank you for joining. Let's stop there, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll continue to learn Torah. Wish everybody a beautiful Shabbos. Please join us at the shul. Rabbi Taylor, we will be introducing him. The chief rabbi will be there. Rabbi Taylor will speak both on Friday night and on Shabbos day. And, he really is a treat. The other day, Rabbi Alon and I were on a call with him, and said, can you give us a quick thought? He said, I don't do quick thoughts. So we pushed him a little bit. So he gave us 5 sentences of absolute genius, and that led to a whole discussion of about another half an hour on our meeting. Worthwhile, please come and be there. You can't miss those kind of beautiful opportunities to learn beautiful Torah. God bless everybody. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for joining.